My name is Sarah Matthews. I'm 34 years old and I live in Cedar Falls, Iowa. 3 months ago, I died in a small church parking lot. My heart stopped beating for over 8 minutes. But what I experienced during those 8 minutes changed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and what really matters. I traveled through a tunnel of pure light, stood before God Himself, and was shown secrets about our existence that most people never get to see. I was sent back with a message that I believe could change your life forever. This is my story. You know, there's something haunting about small towns that people don't talk about much. Everyone knows your name, sure, but they also know your business, your struggles, your every stumble. I grew up in Cedar Falls, Iowa, population barely pushing 1,500 souls. The kind of place where Friday night football games were the highlight of the week, where your reputation followed you from kindergarten to graduation, and where being different wasn't just noticed, it was dissected. My name is Sarah Matthews, and for most of my life, I carried a secret that nearly killed me. But before I tell you about the day I died and came back, I need you to understand how I got there. Because the journey to that hospital bed, to that moment when my heart stopped beating, began years earlier in the most innocent of places, a middle school cafeteria. I was 13 when it started. That age when everything shifts, when childhood's grace period expires and suddenly you're thrust into this brutal social ecosystem where your worth gets measured by things you never knew mattered. I remember sitting at lunch picking at my turkey sandwich when Jessica Morrison, the girl everyone wanted to be, made an offhand comment about my jeans. "Those are so last season, Sarah." She wasn't even being mean, not really. It was just an observation, casual as commenting on the weather. But something inside me cracked that day. A seed of inadequacy got planted, and Lord, did it grow. I started seeing myself through different eyes, critical eyes. Every mirror became an enemy, every social interaction a test I was failing. The voice in my head grew louder. You're not thin enough, not pretty enough, not enough, period. And in a town where everyone knew everyone, there was nowhere to hide from these feelings. High school should have been my fresh start, but instead, it became my battleground. I threw myself into everything: student council, drama club, academic competitions, anything to prove my worth. On the outside, I was the perfect student, the reliable daughter, the girl with her life together. Inside, I was drowning in a sea of self-doubt and perfectionism that felt bottomless. That's when the bulimia started. 15 years old, standing in my family's farmhouse bathroom, making myself sick for the first time. I remember thinking it would just be once, just to feel some control over my body, over my life. But once became twice, twice became a habit, and a habit became my secret shame. The cycle was vicious. Binge in private, purge in secret, smile in public, repeat. My parents never knew. How could they? I was their achiever, their pride and joy, heading off to nursing school on a partial scholarship. College was supposed to be different, supposed to be freedom. Instead, it was just a bigger stage for the same performance. New faces, same fears. The eating disorder followed me like a shadow I couldn't shake. After graduation, I landed my dream job at a medical clinic. That's where I first encountered the little white pills that would nearly destroy me. Phentermine, a prescription appetite suppressant that was all the rage in the late 90s. The doctors I worked for prescribed it freely, and watching patient after patient lose weight effortlessly, I convinced myself I needed it too. Just for a few months, I told myself, just to get to my goal weight. What I didn't understand then was that I wasn't treating a weight problem. I was feeding an addiction. The phentermine didn't just suppress my appetite. It gave me energy, focus, a sense of control I'd been chasing my entire life. Days turned into months, months into years. I found doctors who would keep prescribing, told myself I needed it to function, created elaborate stories about why I couldn't stop taking it. 9 years. 9 years of living on legal speed, of barely eating, of never truly sleeping. 9 years of watching my body slowly break down while my mind convinced me I was fine. The side effects crept in gradually. Heart palpitations that I dismissed as stress, breathing problems I blamed on allergies, manic episodes I attributed to being driven. I got married to David, a kind man who loved me despite the walls I'd built around my heart. He knew something was wrong but couldn't pinpoint what. How do you tell someone you love that you're slowly killing yourself with pills? How do you admit that the woman he fell in love with was really just a carefully constructed facade? The breathing episodes started getting worse. I'd lie down at night, finally ready to sleep, only to wake up gasping, jumping out of bed, pacing the house trying to remember how to breathe. It felt like my lungs were forgetting their most basic function. David would find me at 2 a.m, wide-eyed and terrified, and I'd lie and say it was just a bad dream. But it wasn't just the physical symptoms anymore. The psychological effects were becoming impossible to hide. I'd find myself doing bizarre things, reorganizing our entire garage at midnight, scrubbing baseboards with a toothbrush at 3 a.m., starting elaborate craft projects that I'd abandoned by dawn. My mind was racing constantly, thoughts jumping from one thing to another, like sparks flying off a live wire. The night before everything changed, I thought I was going to die. The breathing episode was the worst yet. Jumping up and down wasn't helping. The panic was overwhelming, and for the first time, I truly understood that I might not make it through the night. I didn't sleep at all, just paced our small house like a caged animal, watching the sun rise through our kitchen window and wondering if it would be the last sunrise David found me that morning, hollow-eyed and shaking. He'd reached his breaking point, and honestly, so had I. We sat at our little kitchen table, the same one where we'd shared thousands of meals, where we'd planned our future, where I'd hidden so many secrets. And he looked at me with eyes full of fear and love and exhaustion. "Sarah, we can't keep going like this," he said, his voice cracking. "I have to work. The kids need you. And I'm terrified I'm going to come home one day and find—" He couldn't finish the sentence, but we both knew what he meant. I should have told him everything right then. Should have called an ambulance, gone to the hospital, faced the truth head on. Instead, I lied. Again. "I just need rest," I told him. "Real rest. Somewhere quiet." The shame was so overwhelming, the secret so heavy, that even facing death seemed easier than facing the truth. He suggested the Hampton Inn down the road, just for one night, just to sleep. "Are you sure you're okay to drive?" he asked, studying my face. "Yeah, I'm fine," I lied. But when I got to the hotel, they were completely booked. A pharmaceutical conference had filled every room, and standing at that front desk, listening to the apologetic clerk, I felt reality starting to slip away. The room was spinning. Her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater, and I knew with absolute certainty that I was running out of time. She mentioned another hotel about 3 miles up the highway. I don't remember driving there. I don't remember checking in. What I remember is standing in that sterile hotel room, staring at the bathtub, and feeling this overwhelming sense of impending doom. Every instinct I had was screaming that if I got in that water, I wouldn't get back out. The feeling was so strong, so urgent, that I didn't even turn off the faucet. I just ran, barefoot, without my keys, without my phone, without any identification. I ran into that parking lot like my life depended on it, because it did. A car almost hit me as I stumbled into the road. The driver, an elderly man with kind eyes and broken English, jumped out to help. In my panic, in my desperation, I tried to explain that I was dying, that I needed help. He couldn't understand my words, but he understood my desperation. When he opened his passenger door and I saw the worn Bible on the seat, I knew God had sent him. He drove me to a small church just up the hill. The pastor, a tall man with gentle hands and worried eyes, took one look at me and knew. Death has a smell, they say, a presence that those who work with souls can recognize. He asked me one question. Do you believe in God? With what I thought was my last breath, I whispered, yes. And then I died. But dying wasn't what I expected. Instead of darkness, instead of nothing, I found myself floating above my body, watching as paramedics worked frantically to restart my heart. I felt no pain, no fear, only the most incredible sense of freedom I'd ever experienced. It was like taking the deepest breath of my life, like finally, truly being myself for the first time. I watched them load my body into the ambulance, watched the pastor pray over the empty space where I'd fallen, watched David race into the hospital parking lot with tears streaming down his face. And I felt such overwhelming love for all of them, these people who barely knew me but were fighting so hard to save me. The tunnel came next, and nothing, no words, no metaphor, no human experience, can adequately describe it. Imagine being shot from a cannon made of pure love, traveling at the speed of light through a corridor of warmth and acceptance and coming home. I knew, without question, that I was heading toward something magnificent. The presence that greeted me was unmistakable. God, not the stern judge I'd been taught to fear, but pure, unconditional love. We communicated without words, shared thoughts and feelings in ways that transcended anything possible in human form. And the first thing I understood was that judgment, all that self-criticism, all that shame I'd carried for so long, was a human creation, not a divine one. The life review began like a movie projected onto the cosmos itself. Every moment of my 34 years played out before us, but not the way I expected. God didn't focus on my failures, my addiction, my lies. Instead, we lingered on moments I'd forgotten, comforting a crying child in Sunday school, helping an elderly neighbor with her groceries, the time I'd sat with a dying patient and held her hand through her final breath. This is what matters, the divine presence communicated. Love given freely, without expectation. Compassion offered in small moments. The beauty of a heart that chooses kindness despite its own pain. Then came the gifts, understanding that I was inherently valuable, that beauty comes from within, that every soul carries divine light regardless of earthly struggles. But the most profound gift was the vision of Earth's future, a time of great change when souls would choose between love and fear, between connection and isolation. You must go back, came the message. Share what you've learned. Help others remember who they really are. The return journey was brutal. A slow descent through darkness filled with voices of despair, hands trying to pull me down into hopelessness. Only by maintaining that connection to divine love could I make it back to my broken body lying in that hospital bed. Opening my eyes in the ICU, seeing David's tear-stained face, trying to speak but having no voice. That was perhaps the hardest part. How do you explain infinity to someone who's never left the finite? How do you describe perfect love to a world obsessed with judgment? The doctors thought I was having a psychotic break. The story David told them, about finding a disheveled woman running barefoot through traffic, talking about God, didn't exactly inspire confidence in my mental health. They prescribed medication, recommended psychiatric evaluation, suggested I'd experienced hallucinations brought on by drug withdrawal. But I knew the truth. I'd been given a gift, a message, a mission, and slowly, carefully, I began to share it. First with David, who eventually believed because he could see the profound change in me. Then with others who were ready to listen, ready to consider that maybe, just maybe, there's more to existence than what we can see with our physical eyes. I don't have all the answers. I can't prove what happened to me that day. All I can tell you is that death isn't the end. It's a doorway. That love is the only thing that truly matters. That every person you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about, carrying light you may not recognize, but deserving of compassion nonetheless. We're all just walking each other home, one breath at a time. And every breath, every single breath, is a gift worth treasuring.